Welcome to How to Yugioh.
Let's explain healthy board. So in this video, I'm going to talk about a healthy board, as last week I talked about a toxic board. Let's get on with the rest of the video. Here we are, the archetype, to me anyways, that symbolizes a healthy board and produces a healthy board. And I want to stress out something very important with Branded. Branded, I would say, is one of the healthiest archetypes that's ever been produced by Konami. This is before the introduction of Albion Sanctifier Dragon and Expulsion, I would say. Those two cards, the Trap, Branded Expulsion, and Albion the Sanctifier Dragon. Now, with that out of the way, let's look at the three key cards that make up Branded and make up this healthy board scenario. That is Aluba, the Jester of Despia, that allows you, as you can see in front of you, to add a branded spell or trap. And then we have Branded Fusion, obviously, that goes into full combo. In fact, it has spawned on memes. It has spawned off a lot of things. And Mirror Jade, the Ice Blade Dragon. Okay, and if we go to the next slide, we can see here from Aluba activates, adds Branded Fusion, and Branded Fusion, we go to see on the other slide, makes Mirror Jade. One of the reasons why Branded makes such a healthy board is that you only have Mirror Jade there, and then you will have stuff that happen in the end phase. Another thing being is that Branded has a clear weakness. This is one of the reasons what makes Branded so healthy. The weakness here is that if you stop Branded Fusion, then you stop the entire deck from functioning.
Facts.
One of the core traits of a healthy boards is that they have easy ways to stop themselves expanding. As your opponent, when you play against this deck, you realize that the deck is strong, yes, but there is an easy way to stop it. And there isn't like some mechanisms in the deck that just spur out advantage after advantage for simply no reason. This is one of the reasons why I consider Branded to be a healthy deck. Remember, I considered a healthy deck before the introduction of Branded Expulsion and Albion the Sanctifier Dragon. I think at that point, it stopped being a healthy deck when those two cards were introduced into the deck, and it started to become a deck that was not healthy anymore. Sure, it's not like it didn't go to a toxic level, but I would say like it's starting to head to a toxic level, and this is why most players in Yu-Gi-Oh! Do not like where Branded is now to where it was before, because where it was before, it was loved as an archetype. We loved it, we sung praises about it, but when you look at Branded's reception now, it is a reception of hatred, a reception of we do not like where Branded is at the moment, and we feel that Branded doesn't need to be doing toxic plays because it's strong enough as it is. Okay, so let's talk about it. One of the key aspects of creation of a healthy board is end phase. What do I mean by this? Now, what I mean by this is that healthy boards get advantages during the end phase. The introduction of end phase advantage that Branded has introduced into the game and to Yu-Gi-Oh! As a whole is a great example of how we can put advantage and how we can have advantage be layered and not be something you get straight away, and how you can appreciate advantage for what advantage is.
I like it.
One of the reasons why Branded is so healthy is this reason. When advantage is just put on there for advantage's sake, when we can see, for example, with Snake Eyes, right, that can just earlier this year that can just get advantage over advantage over advantage over advantage and just keep getting pluses for simply no reason.
You don't get to play, you just lose.
Is that players, we fail to realize what advantage is, and we just take it for granted that a deck can do what it can do. This is one of the reasons why one-card combos are not healthy for Yu-Gi-Oh! In the long run, as it diminishes advantage as a whole, and it diminishes advantage as a concept in Yu-Gi-Oh! As we take for granted what advantage is in archetypes. But when advantage is solely placed in the end phase and is solely made to creep up over time, we appreciate advantage and we use cards sparingly and wonderfully. This is another reason why Branded is such a great deck, as healthy boards are the sort of archetypes that create decks which are easy to play but hard to master. We can see here with Brightest Blazing Branded King in front of you, as you have choices to use with Branded. You can set a negate there. Now, will that negate be useful? Maybe, maybe not. But it allows you to think about what you need during your opponent's turn. Do you need a negate? If we go to the next slide, do you need a super poly that the deck has inbuilt into it so you can fuse on your opponent's turn? Or if we go to the next slide, do you need a Branded in red so that you can go and make Guardian Chimera and pop cards on your opponent's turn? The ability to pick and choose what you need on your opponent's turn is evident. The ability to not have all the solutions in your possession at the moment is also evident in creating a healthy board. And it is understanding this and understanding that you need to have impactful choices and you need to make the correct choice in how you're going to deal with your opponent at that specific point in time is why I like Branded so much and why I love the concept of end phase advantage. End phase advantage is one of the best things Konami has ever created in this game, and I think is something that should be put in every single archetype. It makes you appreciate as players what advantage is. It makes you learn more about the archetype you are playing and makes you a better player for it. This is one of the other reasons why I love Branded so much. Now, let's move on to the next point. And so we come to the second point of healthy boards. They give options. Again, this is another part of healthy board setups that we rarely see in the toxic board matchup. And one of the reasons why, again, Branded comes up again, and it goes back to when I first faced this deck, when it was first released. When I first saw Branded, I can't begin to tell you how I loved this deck so much facing it. Even though I didn't know about this deck gave me pressure. But it gave me pressure as the opponent, not by stopping my plays. It gave me pressure through a card, as you can see in front of you, known as Masquerade the Blazing Dragon, or as I like to call him, Tax Dragon, the dragon of taxes. Indeed, this is a dragon, but this is a concept that has been introduced by Branded, right? That you can apply pressure to your opponent that isn't negation, that isn't saying no. That you can apply pressure to your opponent by simply playing skillful Yu-Gi-Oh! This to me is the epitome of what a healthy board is. That it pressures your opponent, not by telling them they cannot play, but telling them that they have to think about their actions that they do throughout the game. And that is why I like Branded so much, is it gives you options. As the person playing it, it makes you a better player for it. You learn your archetype more. You learn about Yu-Gi-Oh! And its intricacies. You learn to appreciate the game for its weird rulings. You learn to love the aspects of the game that no one ever talks about. You get to experience it for yourself. Indeed, the more I faced Branded, the more I began to realize how Yu-Gi-Oh! Is such an intricate and fantastic game. It made me love Yu-Gi-Oh! For what it is. And it is only when you face Branded, pure Branded, right? And I would say pure Branded without the floodgates, even if we were to bring, let's say, Branded Expulsion and I'll be the Sanctified Dragon. Like, I've done this experiment. When Branded was at full power, I just played pure branded. And let me tell you, it was one of the best feelings I had playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Was that when I beat an opponent, I knew I beat him simply because of skill.
When nothing ruins the game plan.
I didn't beat him because I didn't beat opponents because I stopped their plays. I did not beat them because I knew the lines of my deck. I beat them because I learnt about how my deck interacts with my opponent. And this is another reason why I love Branded so much, is it forces you to interact with the opponent. It tells you the uncomfortable truths when playing with your opponent, that you need to face them. You need to welcome interruption from your opponent. It is the complete opposite of a toxic board and a toxic mind philosophy. The toxic board philosophy teaches you to not interact with your opponent, to have them never interact with you, and to deny their plays. Branded is the complete opposite, as it tells you with its plays and with a pure branded deck, pure, might I add, with nothing in there that is not branded in any kind, but it teaches you that you must interact with your opponent. You must be able to understand your opponent as if you understand yourself. And indeed, to become a fantastic branded player is to become an honest Yu-Gi-Oh player. And indeed, that is why I love Branded so much, as it promotes skillful gameplay, great gameplay, and promotes one of the best aspects of Yu-Gi-Oh itself, which is diversity and creative thinking. So, and we can see with the options that we have here on the next slide, we can see Despian Quiritis, and we can see here with Albion the Sanctified Dragon and Fallen of Albaz. And if we can go to this final slide here, we can see here with the creativity. Again, this is part of the reason why I like Branded so much and why I consider Branded to be a healthy board and create healthy boards naturally. And I would say is the template of how you create healthy boards in Yu-Gi-Oh! One of the reasons why Branded comes again, in my eyes, as the best archetype for creating healthy boards of all time in Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the creativity it allows. It allows creativity for the players that play it, but allows it in a healthy manner, okay? When you play Branded and you play it pure, you begin to realize that there's a lot of aspects of Branded that are very creative here. A lot of aspects, a lot of avenues that you can travel, which you really didn't think you could travel before, as you can go the synchro way with Etude of the Branded. You can go Dragon Link with Branded Regained. You can go Ritual or Fusion matchups with Branded and High Spirit. The possibilities for being creative in Branded are endless. And again, this is why Branded creates these healthy boards. As Branded teaches you, the more you play it, and if you play pro Branded, and I would say, as anyone who's playing Yu-Gi-Oh, just take the time to just get on Edo Pro, play Branded at full power, and play it without the toxic cards that it has, which is Edo and Gimmick Puppet of Nightmare, and just play Branded pure. Play it pure and face players. I'm telling you, it will be one of the best experiments you have ever done for Yu-Gi-Oh! You will come to appreciate the game as it is, and you will come to realize that you are going to become a better player for it. Indeed, when you get creative with Branded, you become a better player. You start thinking of things that you didn't think before. Branded is a sort of deck, the more you play it, the better you become at Yu-Gi-Oh! This is why, again, I love Branded so much as an archetype, as a concept, because it's an archetype with the full design of making you into a better player. Now, let's go over to the next slide, which will talk about problem solving. Okay, and so we'll talk about the last aspect of the healthy board, which is problem solving. Indeed, with branded, you're going to have to solve problems as they come up. And because you don't have negation, or you can't really stop your opponent or negate them, you're going to have to find ways to prevent your plays from being stopped. One of the best ways of preventing your opponent interacting with you in a healthy way is Book of Moon. Again, it is because of branded that Book of Moon has been rediscovered to be a great card. And indeed, this is why, again, I come over singing Branded's praises, why I love this deck so much, as it teaches you how to solve problems in Yu-Gi-Oh! Without negating your opponent. Again, I love the aspect of how super polymerization is used here. Sure, super polymerization has been used in the past for absolutely disgusting and incomprehensible plays. But with branded, especially in the early days of branded, it has been absolutely skillful. I would even argue now is used in a skillful way. Sure, it denies a lot of play, but it adds a whole new element into branded. And finally, fusion duplication. I love this trap. I love this card, especially for branded, as it allows you to play in ways that you couldn't play branded before. Overall, the way to solve problems in branded is a way that I like, and a way that I think more decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Should be designed around, and how players should be solving problems in their decks. It shouldn't be an automatic issue of always saying no or always denying your opponent plays. You should welcome your opponent's interaction. You should expect your opponent's interaction. And furthermore, you should be flexible and be able to deal with problems as they come. And this is why the branded mentality is the best mentality. As when you play branded, you are forced to realize that you have to interact with your opponent. And you are forced to realize that you cannot stop your opponent, but you can solve the issues as they come and deal with them as they come. Okay, and one of the best examples of this is your opponent going to have hand traps that target. You can use Book of Moon, meaning that they cannot target your Aluba. It still means you still get the search because of, Chain Link 1 and 2, but because your card does not exist, as it is face down, it allows you to search. Again, this is a simple interaction, but what Book of Moon begins to teach you as a player, that you can prevent your opponent from stopping your plays in a creative way and a legal way. And indeed, this is why branded is great at making you a better player, as it teaches you interactions in Yu-Gi-Oh! That you never thought of before. It teaches you a way to play the game that you didn't think of in the first or second instance. For example, when I was playing branded, I thought about using Brightest High Blazing King, the trap card that you see earlier in this video that has a negate. Now, even though the negate was a bit not the best and no player played it, I liked playing branded in this way. It didn't mean that I would, even though the negate was a bit situational, even though that it was a bit inconsequential and I couldn't do much with it, I used it very sparingly, but what I did was I managed to use it skillfully, and I valued my negation, and I used it when appropriate and when it was necessary. I didn't just negate for the sake of negating. This is one of the reasons why when you have loads of healthy options that an archetype gives you, you begin to use the option of negation in a healthy way, and you do not misuse negation. This is why healthy boards are great healthy archetypes, are great when they are given negation, as they have so many other options, healthy options, that when they're given negation, they do not squander it. They don't just use it with reckless abandon, but they use it in a constructive and healthy manner. They do not use negation in terms of stopping your opponent. They use it to prevent or to either use that negation to win that game outright. And to me, that is the best way of using negation. Negation isn't meant to be used to simply hinder your opponent and to stop them from playing the game completely. No. Negation should be used as a last resort, as a way to prevent your opponent doing unspeakable things to you, or to preventing you, or used to prevent your opponent from locking you down. So let's go to the overall conclusion. And so what do I have to say about a healthy board? Well, a healthy board involves 4 things. The end phase, it involves options, problem solving, and finally, creativity. These are the things that make up a healthy board in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I choose Branded as Branded is one of the best examples of how you can create a healthy board correctly in Yu-Gi-Oh! And is one of the best templates, I would say, of creating a healthy board in Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, yes, Branded over the years, especially with the 2 cards that I mentioned, Expulsion and Albion Sanctifier Dragon, have indeed garnered a negative connotation in the community for the amount of floodgates that they are putting onto the field, especially. It is true, and it has not garnered a good reputation. But I would argue and say that still Branded is a healthy deck, right? It doesn't do anything remotely disgusting, okay? When you leave out the Expulsion and Albion lines, indeed, Branded is extremely healthy. And I would say that I think Expulsion and Albion should be errated with effects that say special summon monsters that have Fallen of Albaz in their card text only, as their design is to be special summoning only Albaz monsters. Indeed, when I played, Branded with only using Fallen of Albaz, it was extremely skillful. As when I threatened with the Albion Sanctified Dragon, especially summon Fallen of Albaz, I forced my opponent into a lose scenario. Remember, with the Branded loss there, they cannot interact with me when a fusion summon is about to be conducted. And indeed, when Albion summons Fallen of Albaz, a fusion summon is conducted straight away, and I get to fusion summon their board. And given the fact that that Branded also has Branded Banishment, and then you add the fact that there's also Super Polymerization there, and then when you add another fact that you have fusion duplication, all of a sudden the way to interact your opponent has to interact with Branded is extremely limited. And I think this is part of the reasons why I do not feel Branded needed, okay? You to play Gimmick Puppet of Nightmare or any sort of monster floodgate in the deck, as Fallen of Albaz is a beast in itself, being end lost as well, being able to just fuse your opponent's monsters on your opponent's turn, and they're not able to interact with you, yes, I will admit, is disgusting, but is a way to interact with your opponent that isn't negation. And indeed, any sort of, in my eyes anyway, and I know it's going to be a controversial take here, but any sort of way of interacting with your opponent that doesn't deny their plays, to me, is healthy. And I advocate for more of these archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh! In the future. It's not about denying plays, but it is about understanding that your opponent exists and understanding that you need to interact with them. And once you understand that interaction, embracing that interaction. And it is one aspect of Branded that I loved so much, because when I played Branded, it was different to when I played other archetypes. Whenever I've been playing other archetypes in Yu-Gi-Oh!, I've always had in my mind, I have to stop my opponent. If I don't stop them, they will stop me. And it was always about, I deny my opponent plays. However, when I played Branded, I would always be calm. I'd become a wise sage or a black belt and hit a wall of peace. And usually when the opponent built any kind of board, I said it doesn't really matter, as I can just play branded as it is and break that board. I was never intimidated by my opponent's big boards because I knew with careful planning, skillful gameplay, and by knowing Yu-Gi-Oh's intricate rules that I could break any board that my opponent could set up. It wasn't that I felt I was a better player, but that if I was going to beat my opponent at Yu-Gi-Oh, that I needed to get better and understand the rules of Yu-Gi-Oh that much more. And that made the wins that I had with Branded that much more impactful, as I felt as a player that when I won that game, I did not win a game with Branded because I stopped my opponent's plays. I won that game because I was simply more skillful and I used the rules of Yu-Gi-Oh to the fullest benefit. And that is why, in my eyes, Branded is an example of a healthy board in Yu-Gi-Oh, as it teaches you one of the most fundamental things in Yu-Gi-Oh, using the rules to your advantage. And with that, I'll end today's discussion with a healthy board in Yu-Gi-Oh and my hot take on it. Tune in next time as I'll talk about more things. Well, that's all I've got to say in this video.
We come to the end of this video. So, as I like to say, you are one step closer to becoming a Yu-Gi-Oh master. My fate, right, is in your hands.